Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Rooted at Badger Rocks virtual garden series. My name is Forrest Smart. I'll be here teaching y'all a little bit about harvesting, curing, and storing potatoes. We're about the end of July right now. Well, mid-July, end of July. We planted potatoes here actually, I think around April. If you go back around April for our workshops, I actually was the one that did the planting of potatoes. So kind of coming back around full circle. Going to be taking out our harvests that we got here. So for our potatoes here today, we're going to be harvesting them. Again, showing you the curing process, the importance of it, as well as a good place to store them. And yeah, just a proper way to harvest. We'll get right into it. Again, for potatoes, for a good time to tell when they're ready is you want their plants. It'll start to die out. All the leaves, all the foliage will start turning brown. The stems will go start dying back. We still have a lot that have a lot of green still left on them, so these ones might still be a little bit early to harvest, but you can still always harvest them. Just the potatoes might be a little bit smaller. Maybe the skin might be a little bit softer on the outside. But today we're going to be harvesting some. I see some that are already dying back. So these ones we're going to try and find and see what we got underneath. When it comes to harvesting, it's just kind of like garlic too. We're pulling stuff up from underneath the ground. So a lot of times the soil might be a little hard or it might be really compact. Unless you have really wet soil, so it might be a little easier to pull out then. But then your potatoes just might be full of soil or a little bit of wet dirt then. But if we have drier dirt, sometimes we can loosen up the soil with either like a pitchfork, digging fork, or just a shovel as well works. Again, if they're loose enough, you can always just try to pull them out with your hands as well. But I think we'll try maybe the pitchfork today, see how well that works. So again, trying to find that nice dead stalk or one that's just fallen back real nice and brown. And then we're going to go a little bit outside. Maybe I'll go about maybe a foot outside of there. We'll dig straight down. So trying to loosen the soil a bit. Let's see what we got underneath. Nothing yet. Go a little further in. Oh yeah, there we go. Seeing some now. Oh yeah, here we go. We got some purple potatoes here. Pretty good size, a little bigger than fingerling. But these are about good size right here. Let's see if we got more. We'll pull the root out. Go around the root, dig a little more. A couple more. Oh yeah. Couple good ones in here. Going around them. Oh yeah. Some good looking potatoes. Great color. A little bit smaller, but nonetheless, a pretty good harvest. So we got our potatoes right here. Again, our soil is not too wet right now, so the soil, or it's not really sticking too much to the potatoes. We can actually leave them just like this. You can wash them off, but if you wash them, you got to be very delicate not to accidentally puncture them or bruise them or like make any scratches or anything like that, because then that's going to affect the curing process as well as how long they'll last. So we'll put them in our crate right now. Let's see, why don't we dig up one more while we're at it just to see if we can find a few more. We'll go right around right here. Anything else in these ones? Let's see a couple more small ones. The soil's pretty loose, so you can just kind of sift through the soil, find them. See if we can grab a few more just to find a few more examples. Looks like we got a couple. Yep, again, we got a couple of little tiny ones. Very small, very petite. Little fingerling potatoes, but very good still. Let's see, try to find maybe one or two more. Have a good little harvest. Well, I guess this will be good for now. Just trying to show you the harvesting technique. Again, you can use pitchfork, a shovel just to loosen it up. Or if it's nice and ready, sometimes you can just dig right through with your hands. A little bit easier if you don't mind getting your hands dirty. So now that we have our potatoes harvested, usually if you have a lot more, you'd want to make sure you go through them, see if there's any that are maybe have, like I said, maybe nice and soft, or not nice and soft, but they got soft spots, blemishes, little cuts on them. They might want to be picked out right away, and they don't need to be discarded, but you might want to use them like right away out of the garden, because potentially if you cure them, kind of like when you have one bad apple and it kind of ruins the bunch. Same with potatoes. If you have one that's starting to rot or starting to sprout right away, if it's with all the other potatoes, it's going to start infecting them a little bit quicker as well. So try to keep them separate, or to utilize the ones that have any imperfections right away. And then once we have our potatoes harvested, again, you can either wash them off, but if you keep the dirt on them, it actually helps protect the outer skin a little bit more during the curing process. And then, what we got over here? So as for curing, a lot of times if it's like wet soil and you got a lot of like moisture on the outside, you'll just want to leave your potatoes out maybe in like a shady area, or if it's nice and cloudy, kind of like today, we can leave them out for maybe, I don't know, maybe an hour or so, just to let them dry out a little bit more on the outside. And then once that's done, we can start the curing process, which basically we'll be keeping them in a dark area, usually between about 45 and 60 degrees. It's kind of finicky with the temperature and humidity for keeping potatoes, because if they get too much temperature, or if they get too warm and too high of temperatures, then they'll start to sprout. Once they start sprouting, they're kind of done for like eating, as well as if you keep them too low of temperature, if you like keep them in the fridge or refrigerated, a lot of times they'll start to go black, they'll get black spots, a lot of the starches will turn to sugar, and then that's not really what you want with your potatoes as for taste wise. And if you leave them out in the sun, or if you try to dry them out in the sun too long, they'll start to turn green. Once your potatoes start turning green, they're not very good. They kind of become a little bit, what's the word? Solanine, I think is the chemical that gets produced if they start turning green. And it's just not what you want with your potatoes. So right now these look good. It's a nice cloudy day, so if we wanted to, we could let these just dry out in the sun for a little while. But otherwise, these are almost ready to go. I see almost no blemishes, very little spots that are opening on the potato. Yeah, these would be really good right now. They'd be pretty much ready to go for our curing process. And again, we just want to make sure there's plenty of ventilation or airflow, a little bit cooler, dark areas. And again, if you can make it humid in the storing area or your curing area, it's going to help keep them from shriveling up. Again, another finicky part is just trying to get the humidity level, because if there's not enough moisture in the air, they'll dry out and they'll shrivel up. But if they're too moist, then they'll start to rot or they'll start to sprout. So you kind of got right in between, right in the sweet spot. And we got a nice crate here. It's got slotted siding as well as on the bottom. Again, we just want enough airflow so that they don't get stale in here. They don't start to rot or anything like that. So that's basically the gist of curing potatoes. Again, we just want these to last a lot longer. If you pull them right out of the garden, they'll last a couple of weeks, maybe up to like 6 weeks on their own, just stored in a cool place. If you can cure them, they can actually last almost up to like 6 or 8 months. So if you planted these in the springtime, harvest them in the summer, they could last almost all the way till springtime, or the following spring. And if you have planting in the springtime, harvest in the summer, you can actually take some of your potatoes and just plant them in during summer and get a fall harvest as well. And yeah, that's kind of the gist of it. Again, you want to wait till they're dying back more. We have potatoes over here as well that are growing. We actually didn't plant any of these tomatoes. These were just left over from the previous year. And yeah, if you just leave your potatoes in the ground, eventually they'll grow into more potatoes. And let's see, one other thing. If your potato plants die back and your potatoes are just chilling in the ground, you can actually just keep them in the ground and they'll store in there. You can just use them whenever they're ready or whenever you're ready to use them, as well as, yeah, then you don't actually have to store them in a separate place. The only key with that is you just want to make sure the soil isn't getting super wet, super saturated, because then they'll start to rot. And then, yeah, as long as it's not too cold, they'll keep in for a couple months in the ground as well. So yeah, that's basically the gist for harvesting potatoes, curing potatoes, as well as storing them. Just want to make sure it's nice and dark, got well airflow, a little bit of humidity, a little bit of moisture in the air, and they'll be good to go. So that's pretty much about it. Again, potatoes are a great harvesting for summertime, as well as you can get a fall time harvest, and there's just a lot to do with them. But that'll wrap it up for this week's garden workshop, and we'll see you next week with another edition.